Welcome to the Rabbi's Message. This is Rabbi Elazar Bogomilsky bringing you a weekly Torah portion message. The portion of this week that will be read in synagogues throughout the world is Parshat Vayechi, which is the last and final Torah portion from the first of the 5 books of Moses. The book of Genesis, the last one, is called Vayechi. And it opens up with the life known as Vayechi Yaakov, that the life of Jacob, and it really discusses Jacob's deathbed, the moment before he passes away. And the commentaries explain why we use that term Vayechi, and they interpret and explain that the truth is the righteous people don't pass away. Maybe on a physical level they are not here, but Mazaro b'chayim afu b'chayim, just as his descendants, meaning the descendants of Jacob, who are us, are alive, so too he lives on. And the Torah goes on to explain in a phenomenal episode that takes place between Joseph and his father Jacob, and the blessings of his grandchildren, Ephraim and Manasseh. And then later on it goes on to describe the unique blessing that each and every one of the heads of the tribes of Israel, the sons of Jacob, receive from their father. But what I would like to pause on for a moment is this very interesting episode that takes place between Joseph and Jacob. And it begins in Genesis chapter 48, verse 1. And it says as follows: Now it came to pass after these incidents that someone said to Joseph, "Beware, your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons with him. The names were Manasseh and Ephraim. And someone told Jacob and said, "Behold, your son Joseph is coming to you." And Israel, which is another name for Jacob, summoned his strength and sat up on the bed. Jacob says to Joseph, "Almighty God appeared before me in Luz, in the land of Canaan, and he blessed me. And he said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and cause you to multiply. And I will make you into a congregation of people, that I will give you the land of your seed after you, and the everlasting inheritance." And what's interesting, it goes on to a fascinating episode. Joseph comes before his father on his deathbed and says, "Please, Dad, bless my children." Now Joseph had 2 sons, Manasseh being the older son, Ephraim being the older son. Joseph approaches his father with the older son on Joseph's left side, which would be Jacob's right side, and Ephraim, which is the younger son of Joseph, was on Joseph's right side, which means when he approached his father, it would be his father's left side. What's the significance of analyzing and describing exactly where each one stood? Well, the reason is as follows. The right side is considered the stronger side, the more powerful blessing. And Joseph felt that his elder son Manasseh should receive the right hand of his father upon his head. And Ephraim, the younger son, should receive the left hand of Jacob. But what happens is just the opposite. As Joseph approaches his father extends his hands, and then all of a sudden crosses his hands. So his right hand that should be placed on the elder grandson Manasseh, he crosses his hands, and it ends up on the head of Ephraim, the younger of the grandson. And his left hand that should be placed on Ephraim's head is all of a sudden, on Ephraim's head, is crossed and placed on Manasseh's head. Sikel es yadav, the verse says. Jacob crossed his hands. Joseph watches this thing happening before his eyes. And Joseph says, Father, you've mistaken. Father, you've made a mistake. Ephraim is not the elder grandson, but Manasseh is. Place your right hand above his head. And a fascinating reply comes from Jacob. Jacob says, my dear son, I'm not senile. I know I'm on my deathbed, but I know what I'm doing. The blessing, the right hand blessing that you want to be given to Manasseh really needs to be given to Ephraim. Because I see in the future from his generations, from his descendants, will arise and come greatness, greater than from the older grandson Manasseh. And that's what happens. Jacob gives them a blessing, and the Torah moves on with another story. What's going on over here? Why would Jacob change the will of his son Joseph so openly? Why would Joseph contradict his father in front of his grandchildren? Even deeper, if you think about it, Joseph comes to his father that he should give him a blessing and he should bless his children. For the blessing, he's okay. But when it comes, then he does something different. He thinks his father made a mistake. He wanted a blessing that Jacob is good for. Now all of a sudden you think your father's an old man, 147 years old. Senile, can't see straight. He made a mistake. Which son is older, which one's younger? This demands a deeper interpretation, a perspective, a profound message. How can we relate to the story of Ephraim and Manasseh? You know, interestingly, there's a practice, a custom, that till this very day, a tradition in many people's homes, that every single Friday night, they gather their sons and they say a special prayer. And the blessing they give their son is that God should bless you, just like Ephraim and Manasseh were blessed by Jacob. That's how God should bless your children, our children. And this is a tradition that many, many people have, where they do a special blessing. And they mention these words, and specifically the grandchildren of Jacob, Ephraim and Manasseh. See, the truth is, Joseph and Jacob were really teaching mankind a profound lesson. There are two ways you can serve God. Everyone wants to change in life. We want to do better. People want to do the right thing. How do I make sure that I'm doing the right thing? Or guide me, inspire me, educate me, show me the road, show me the path of light, show me the direction which I can take in my life, and through this direction, I will find meaning and purpose. Show it to me. Joseph had one approach. Jacob had another approach. You see, the names that Joseph named his children, Manasseh and Ephraim, symbolize something very profound. Manasseh, the elder son, the verse tells us, Joseph gave birth to these children in the land of Egypt. And his oldest son, Manasseh, he says, God has given me this amazing gift, but has been in a land that I've forgotten, the past, my upbringings. And in order not to forget that past, to connect with the past, Joseph names his older son Manasseh. Ephraim, the younger son, he says just the opposite. He names his son Ephraim. Ephraim comes from the word of being fruitful, multiplying, engaging, abundance of wealth, happiness, success befalls Joseph. Joseph becomes the viceroy in Egypt, the most powerful country in that period of time of history. No one was as powerful as Joseph in the world besides the king himself. He was viceroy, the second most powerful person in the world. You could imagine, blessed with every physical desire and need one could only imagine of. He says, God, you gave me the son Ephraim. I want to show gratitude, and I will call him that name of acknowledging the fruitfulness and the blessing, the abundance that you have given me. You see, Joseph understood that when a person wants to transform and change your life, enhance your life, the critical and the most important thing, in Hebrew we call it surmira. Disengage, change the past, transform yourself, uproot, so to speak, the evil, the disturbance, the destruction, the moments and the particulars of life that weigh down the human being. Dig deep, uproot the problem. Once you have eradicated and you have harnessed the problem and you've sort of wiped up the mess, then engage in the second stage known as aseh tov, do good, pursue happiness, abundance, joy, gratitude. But it has to begin somewhere. You have to begin with uprooting the evil. And once you sweep out the evil, you can bring in the delicacies, the goodness, the kindness, the appreciation. Joseph said, hey, listen, how do you think I survived? One of the Hebrews, raised as a shepherd, thrown into a pit, seeing multiple changes and challenges in the course of my life, imprisoned for 12 years. Joseph had a hard upbringing, brothers that didn't get along with him, sold as a slave, wrongly accused, I should say, thrown into the Egyptian, not just slavery, but prison. You could imagine there was no comfort there. 12 years. It was so easy for him to give up and say, you kidding me? I'm done. Religion, faith, God. What are you joking me? You know what I've been through? There's no God. There is no faith. There is no religion. I'm done. Let's close that door and let me become a real Egyptian. Let me become like everyone else around me. Yet the terminology when we glorify and we express ourselves and we analyze who is Joseph, we use the term Yosef HaTzadik, Yosef the righteous individual. Joseph the individual that has transformed and inspired through thick and thin. He stayed true to his faith and his religion. As the verse says in this week's Torah portion, Es Elokim ani yoreh. Joseph says, I fear the Almighty God. Never for a moment should you think that I've wavered in my commitment, in my love, in my fear, in my affection for the Almighty God. Because I understand everything is done with a purpose. But Joseph says, how do you think I was able to come to that level? I worked on myself through these two stages. The stage of Menashe, I've eradicated the evil. I've eradicated, that's what Menashe means, to change. I have changed my past, the spiritual interpretation, in order that I should be able to have the Ephraim, the abundance, the goodness, the natural giving, the excessive interaction, the positive influence on others. But that's the order it has to be. First Manasseh, and then Ephraim. Jacob turns to his beloved son Joseph and says, Joseph, you're a hero. And I know the truth is that two-step process is probably the right approach. Eradicate the evil, remove the evil, and pursue goodness and kindness. But Jacob tells Joseph, the blessing that I want to give my grandchildren and future generations is a blessing that they should not have to turmoil, work hard, totally transform. The blessing that I want to give them is that first Ephraim, the younger son, so to speak. The deeper meaning is first the abundance, first the gratitude, the fruitfulness, the engagement, the positive interaction. That's what one should first pursue. It's an easier route, but it's a route that you don't have to wait. It's a route that a person doesn't have to say to himself, I want to do good, but I'm just not there. So why start now? When I totally clean my home, then I'll reset it up nicely. Then I'll paint it, remodel it. But now, I don't have the strength. Jacob says, start with the Ephraim. Let you introduce the approach of understanding what it means to transform, not from the depth of evil and eradicate it, but bring in the level of abundance. Do good. Give of yourself. You want to change yourself? Give of yourself. You want to be a different person? You don't have to think that, gosh, I have to totally uproot my entire past. I can change by simply engage in something that is positive. That is why every single Friday night, the power and the deeper message of this blessing, that for thousands of years, fathers are blessing their sons with the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh, is the message that every single human being can realize that it's not a difficult path. It's not the moments of purity. You first have to clean, and then you can embrace goodness and kindness. I can't go visit somebody when I'm not really ethically a great person. Engage in goodness. There's a story I one time heard of a great rabbi who still lives. His name is Rabbi Manis Friedman. Many, many different essays he's written and books. He lives in Minnesota. And someone in his community, he runs an educational institution. One of his students had profound challenges within her daily life. And they were based on her social interaction, her ability to properly date, make room in her life for another human being. And it came to the point that she was getting older and older. And they said, no one wants to go out with this person. She does not have that personality, that pleasant interaction, that really area in the life that she says, I could embrace, I can change. I want to hear what the other person has to say. And she went from one doctor, one psychologist, one psychiatrist. Then she went, so many different types of therapeutic interchanges. And everyone wrote her up and gave her an analysis of what her issues are. But after a year and a half of different therapy, nothing helped. And she came back to Rabbi Manis Friedman and she said, I'm sorry, there's no hope. I don't know what to do. So he said, let's go to one other rabbi. Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of blessed memory, known as the Rebbe, lives at that time in Brooklyn, New York. And maybe he can shed some light and some guidance. So she sets up a private audience and she comes to the Rebbe with all her files of different type of analysis the doctors have come to, analyzing who she is. And she places it on the Rebbe's table. And he sort of goes through the entire stack of papers. And he says, so what is the problem? So she says, Rebbe, haven't you read the reports? He says, yes, I have read the reports. But what is the problem? So she says, Rebbe, come on. Don't you see what each and every one of these doctors wrote up to define who I am? They all described what type of person. What's my problem? Narcissistic, egotistic, no room for another human being in your life. They all described me. And yes, I have this mother I didn't get along with, and this grandmother had this issue, and this, it's in my DNA. We just have a family history of so many problems. So the Rebbe says, so what's the problem? So she starts getting upset. I just told you. I am narcissistic. I just told you. Look what they described me as. I have all these different medical terms that I fit right in there. So the Rebbe calmly says, what is the problem? She says, don't you understand? I'm a selfish human being. I don't have any space or room for another human being. I'm selfish. So the Rebbe says, I have a good idea. Why don't you be less selfish? She says, less selfish, but I am selfish. He says, that's right. When you go back to school, and when you're sitting in the lunchroom, and a friend says, can you get me this? Can you get me that? Try it every day. Choose one person to go out of your way and do a favor for. Change your behavior. Change the way you act today. Change the way you interact with another human being. Every single day, do one act. You say you're selfish. What do you mean you're selfish? Change yourself, and you won't be selfish anymore. And sure enough, she took this advice, and today she has a loving family with grandchildren and so on and so forth. The message is clear. There is an approach of Joseph, and there's an approach of Jacob. Joseph says, eradicate, transform, dig deep, uproot the evil, and then pursue goodness. Jacob says, don't wait around for that. It's too hard. It's too long. Pursue your behavior. Make a difference today. Change the way you interact. You're selfish. Do something that's kind. You don't want to do something of giving today. Do one act of giving. Change yourself today. Engage in what Ephraim means. Ephraim means to give forth. Ephraim means to inspire. Ephraim means to be fruitful, multiply. Positive, interaction, growth. That's what it's about. I'm hoping you take this message of this week's Torah portion as we conclude the first book of the book of Genesis, Parshat Vayechi, with the words chazak, chazak, v'nischazek, which means be strong, and we should be strengthened. Let us all hope and pray that each and every one of us in our own life, we should have that ability to transform and change ourselves in the sense of pursuing one act every day, of one interaction of goodness and kindness. And together, I am certain that this message will leave fruitful outcomes. Individuals that are engaged, that are selfless, and living a much more productive and meaningful life. You're listening to the Rabbi's Message.